We are now joined by Lee Hoffman, who is a partner of Pullman Comley, LLC. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So not only are you a partner, but you also serve on the state of Connecticut's Brownfields Task Force. So you're a key advisor for Brownfield sites. What are some of the types of sites that developers should be honing in on, and also what should they be avoiding?
Well, the biggest thing is that when you're working with brownfields, it's a real estate development project that has an extra wrinkle to it. So the first thing is to make sure that the basics of the real estate deal work. Too often developers get sucked into a brownfield site because they want to do brownfields, and so they pick a site that is easy in terms of the remediation and the environmental problems and the compliance issues, but doesn't make a lot of sense in the marketplace. So they either have grandiose dreams that are too big, or they're thinking too small with what they have. And at the end of the day, what you wind up with is a bunch of bulldozers and dump trucks that are stalled, sitting on the site, a very large hole in the ground, and not a whole lot to show for it. So the one thing that developers need to focus on is brownfields have unique opportunities in that they are smack dab in the middle of urban communities with good infrastructure and good possibilities for development, but you have to have a good development idea, you have to have a good plan going in. Just the fact that you're focusing on the environmental problems doesn't necessarily make the transaction work. And frankly, if developers lose money, they won't develop more and more brownfields.
And along that same vein, what should municipalities be looking at?
Municipalities have to realize that they're in competition with one another for brownfield redevelopers as well as just developers generally. So I think for municipalities, what they have to do is really put their best foot forward and start thinking about how they can present these sites to the developers so that developers become interested. A lot of developers now have nationwide portfolios. They're looking on the internet, they're trying to see what's out there. Each developer has a different thing that they want to do. Some developers will only do waterfront development, some will only do residential, et cetera, et cetera. But if you get the developers as much information as possible and make it as public as possible, people will come to your door. You know, the old saying, if you build it, they will come. And what I see there is municipalities are afraid to do testing. They're afraid to show what the warts are. But if you show what not only is good, but also where the problems lie, the developers can make those decisions right up front as to whether or not it's something they want to tackle, and you'll probably be more likely to get a developer who actually wants to come in and do the development for you.
Now, you also work on compliance issues. What is the biggest issue that you see?
I think the biggest issue that I'm seeing now is one that we've seen for a couple of years, which is since the Brownfield Amendments in 2002, we have a lot of, sorry to be a lawyer here, but we have a lot of compliance issues associated with CERCLA that have been handled. The Brownfield Amendments took care of that. Everybody understands it. The states have followed suit, and they're willing to give certain developers, certain bona fide prospective purchasers, a lot more leeway in terms of how to comply. The problem that I'm seeing is if you also have RCRA corrective action sites, those sites that went into the Fed hazardous waste program, there's still an awful lot of obligations, including 30 years of monitoring and tighter remediation standards that have to be worked out. So you've got to take a look long and hard at your site, because if you're dealing with a RCRA corrective action site, all of the brownfields protections in the world aren't going to get it done for.
And what is your priority coming out of this conference?
Well, I suppose I have two priorities. On a personal level, I like to enjoy the food and culture of Atlanta. It's a lot nicer and a lot warmer than it is in Connecticut right now. But professionally, this is a very specialized conference and a very specialized industry. And the fact of the matter is that given the fact that it's so small, almost everybody who is involved in the industry is here. And this is a real opportunity to meet people. And a lot of what goes on in brownfield redevelopment, as with any real estate development, is you have to have a level of trust. The regulators have to trust the developers that they're going to do the right thing. If you're buying a contaminated property from an existing corporation, that corporation has to trust you that you'll actually redevelop it correctly, et cetera, et cetera. And these conferences are fantastic for building that level of trust amongst the stakeholders. They're also fantastic learning opportunities. Every session I go to, I'm learning something. I've been doing this for 18 years, and I realize how little I know every time I come to one of these conferences. So that's pretty fantastic.
Lee Hoffman, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us.
Thank you.
Thanks.